There we go.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Education of Homewood School District 153 for Monday, February 1st, 2021. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Here.
Mrs. Bethea?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Zinnerman?
Here.
Mrs. Haverkorst?
Here.
Mr. Lawrence?
Here.
Mrs. Marks?
Here. 7 present. Let me begin by saying that this is our first live streamed meeting. So I know you were expecting us maybe 9 minutes ago. We tested and tested and tested, and of course, as technology normally works, when you go to do it for the first time for real, it doesn't always work as you would expect it. But we're here now, and we're glad you're joining us. And so, with that being said, is there anyone in the audience who has come to address the board on any items that are not on tonight's agenda? Okay. And let's move right on to our action agenda item, approve the district reopening program for staff and students. Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, it's exciting that February 1st is here and we're talking about reopening our schools. I just want to mention some current developments regarding our opening schools. So, we believe there's just full support from our great administrative team. They've been working really hard to get ready. And from our ATA leadership team and our staff. We're excited that everyone is on the same page and that we have support for a return to school plan and timeline. I think our goals and interests are shared regardless of the child's and family's choice, whether they are coming back hybrid or they're staying full remote. And those are goals and interests that are shared as a school community. We believe all of our metrics that we're considering and monitoring are favorable for a safe reopening. I would always advise you to check out our COVID dashboard or website to keep up on our metrics. The other good news is vaccines have become available for our staff. This morning I asked our school nurses who are kind of tracking that. We already have approximately 40% of our staff that have received their first dose. We got notice of those web links and things just over a week and a half ago, and our staff very excitedly got those scheduled, and their second dose is getting scheduled too, and I'm sure more and more staff are getting those appointments as they become available. Another important development, I think, is as the evidence has shown that through some recent research through the CDC and other published articles, that if you have appropriate mitigations in place, that you can safely reopen. And the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Cook County Department of Health both support that reopening and in-person learning as long as there's good mitigations in place. And I'm confident in our efforts in that area. I also think we worked tirelessly since March 13th, almost a year, all of our staff in collaboration with our building leadership teams, the Homewood Education Association, our administrative council, to develop our programs and timeline and the consistent educational program that we provided to our families. We have weekly discussions as a staff, weekly discussion with Ms. Kozel and other leadership team members. And when new questions arise, we discuss those, we collaborate, and we publish a staff FAQ to keep everybody informed of what our decisions are. We've also worked hard to make sure all our PPE, enhanced cleaning protocols, transportation for kids, food service, etc., we are ready to go. But we continue to listen, we continue to accommodate, we continue to adjust and compromise to ensure as many staff, students, and families feel safe and comfortable to enter our buildings. We continue to add such things as air purifiers for certain classrooms, desk shields as staff ask for them, and continue to listen and add things as we move forward and get ready for kids to return. Our building administrators, I'm so proud of you guys. They continue to adjust. Just when we think we're ready to reopen, back in August, we have a delay. Just when we think we might open in October or September, we'd like it might be better to wait because the professional healthcare advisors are saying it's going to be bad late fall, winter, which it was. We want to get ready to go, and they are busily working and finalizing schedule and details and roster assignments. It's also important to remember that we successfully ran our facilitated distance learning academy for a lengthy period of time with a large number of kids in the building without any significant concerns. We continue to share ideas with other school districts. Every Monday, I have a meeting with 66 other school districts to share ideas, districts that are fully remote and districts that are already back in hybrid, and we can consult and learn from each other of what best practices are out there to have a successful in-person learning occur. Again, we have extremely dedicated staff members, dedicated parents, patient community, board members that listen and are on top of things every single day to ensure that we can and will reopen our schools successfully. So with that, we have an updated timeline that we want to propose. Our basics of our plan is unchanged, that we adopted November 30th and made adjustments as we tweaked it and got ready to go. But the basics of that plan are really unchanged. However, given the recent availability of vaccines and things like that, we want to adjust this timeline to make sure that we can have as many people as possible feel comfortable and ready to return. So the adjusted timeline is February 3rd, which is only a couple days from now. There's an expectation that all of our district office staff and administrators are on site full time unless they have an approved ADA accommodation. So on Wednesday, most of us have never been away from the building anyway since March 13th, 2020, but there's an expectation that we need to be here working together and preparing for our kids to return. On February 8th, all staff are expected to report to their buildings unless they also have an approved ADA accommodations. We did designate 2 days for staff to work remotely, which is February 12th and February 9th as we transition back in. On February 25th and 26th, Willow and Churchill will begin to phase in their kids with various orientation activities for their hybrid students. And on February 26th, I believe James Hart will provide an orientation activity for some of their new students in the afternoon on that Friday. March 1st, the timeline is Willow and Churchill will fully implement their respective hybrid program. March 2nd through the 4th, James Hart will begin to phase in their programs and provide orientations for hybrid students. And then March 8th, James Hart, the start of our third trimester, will fully implement our hybrid program, and we will be off and running for the rest of the year unless we are closed down by the governor or the county health department or someone else. I'm confident that we will be ready to go as we are today, to be quite honest. We've been ready for a long time. Timeline and recommendation accomplishes, I think, several goals of our administrative team, council, and HG leadership team. It implements the transition at the beginning of the third trimester for James Hart, which was something that we've been discussing for a couple of weeks, which will help those kids transition if they have a teacher change or they start a new program for the third trimester. It also provides a little additional time for our teachers and other assistants to receive the second COVID-19 vaccine shot. As of today, as I mentioned, we have about 40% of our staff that have already received their first dose, which is great, and they continue to get appointments. It also provides ample time for our district office personnel, some building administrators, custodial, maintenance staff, our school nurses, our teachers and our assistants to prepare, have schedules ready, and any additional mitigation strategies that we'd like to implement. Finally, it'll provide a solid 12 weeks, entire trimester for hybrid in-person learning for our students in a full remote program for the students who continue to stay remote. We're not going to be done though. We're just kind of getting started, and we need to be thinking about what our future looks like as we enter past spring break and into the finals trimester and into the summer. Our district teams will continue to monitor our local metrics. But as I mentioned, we plan to open for hybrid instruction on that March 1st days at Willow and Churchill and March 8th at Hart. District team will review our overall plan and program and make sure that we don't, what adjustments do we need to make? We haven't done this before. So I anticipate that we will have some slight adjustments in how we run things and do things. But those will happen probably after spring break, after we get a chance to kind of see how it works. What works well, what doesn't work well. So we will be changing probably and moving some things around as necessary to provide the best educational outcomes for our students. A good example of that might be just the way we have to do self-certification. You know, could you imagine having to do, 200 kids with that form and trying to take temps? Districts do it many different ways. It's the way we're going to start out, but there could be other ways we do things going into the future. We want to share and do best practices to get certain things done to make sure everyone is safe. We will continue to have our weekly conversations with HE leadership and my administrative council in the effort to continuously improve our program and address any staff questions or concerns. We have district teams already focusing on our summer learning opportunities. We're already starting to plan what that's going to look like. We know there's learning loss. We know we want kids back as soon as possible. And summertime will be an opportunity to do some of that besides looking into next year. And then just a reminder, the vaccines, they don't change any of our current plans or our mitigation efforts. In my view, getting protected, which is great, is just one layer of a mitigation effort. It does not change the fact that we will be wearing masks for the remainder of the school year at a minimum. It doesn't change the fact that social distancing and physical distancing will be important. Washing hands, the 3 W's that we've been talking about almost for a year will still be in place. Cleaning protocols, everything must be at a high level to ensure the safest environment for our kids. So the building principals here, if you have any specific questions for them about their phase-in or their program, our health and safety team, I asked for 3 nurses here along with Mary Marker, who handles all the ordering for everything. They've done an absolutely phenomenal job getting our schools ready. I also asked Kevin Keene and Paul Kuzmak to come tonight, but since they basically worked 24/7 the last day, making sure we can park our cars today and the sidewalks were clean. That was a lot of snow, and they did an amazing job. And I said, that's okay, guys, we got this tonight, but if there's specific questions about building operations, I can pass it along to them. All I can say is this health and safety team has been working closely since, April of last year. It seems like 10, 11 months. And continue to meet and work hard to make sure that staff and students feel comfortable being in school, and they're a phenomenal team.
Thank you. I think before we open it up for questions, I'm going to ask Laura Kosel, who's president of the Homewood Education Association. You have a statement that you want to read?
She just needs to stand close to the
just
table.
close by that little table.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
My name is Laura Kosel. I'm in Churchill, for those of you that don't know me. HA with leadership would like to take this opportunity to support the school plan for you to return to school on March 1st. As a school community, we must be mindful of the fact that the goal for our school district is to have students in school. We feel that HSC 153 is fully dedicated to implementing the safety guidelines recommended by the CDC and ICH. The plan is designed to consider the safety of all staff and students. Administration has been very open to receiving staff questions and concerns. HA leadership has received numerous individual questions and thoughts, and each one has been discussed and addressed with Dr. Mitchell and/or Dr. McAllister. In addition, administration welcomes like feedback and encourages anyone to bring questions and concerns directly to them. Both Doctors Mitchell and McAllister have been very understanding of the serious nature of this pandemic and the feelings and fears that accompany it. We feel that this plan shows a real willingness on administration's part to listen to HTA membership and respond favorably to what have been well considered recommendations. Over the last year, HEA has distributed several surveys with the intent of inviting staff to ask questions, express concerns, and even give feedback on the current plan at that time. As a result, administration has adjusted parts of the plan to meet those recommendations on several occasions. Most recently, we agreed to our recommendation to start March 1st and hope that more staff will have the opportunity to be vaccinated. We are sympathetic to the fact that people have varied feelings and hesitations about returning to school. We know that the plan will appease everyone. Our hope is that this thorough and well-thought-out return to school plan will go a long way in calming unease for all concerned. And lastly, I would like to encourage Chief Membership, Dr. Mitchell McAllister, and Board of Education, for their responsibility, collaboration, support, and understanding, and of course, our families and community members. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks, Lord. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay, so let's start with, principals. Do you each want to say a few words briefly about what you're doing in your building, to what families can expect?
What order do you want us?
Oh, we'll start with the youngest kids. Melissa.
Thanks.
If you want to stand maybe a little bit away from it and just speak a little louder, there's a little bit of echo. Maybe hold up. I can sit in the chair with you, if you want to sit in the chair, so that would be good. Speak nice and loudly, appreciate it.
First time, here we go.
Please, as long as you carry my bottle. Hi. So at Willow, our thought is we are going to have our second graders and our first graders come back on the 25th and the 26th, which is the Thursday, Friday. And we will have kindergarten and pre-K remain remote for those 2 days. Those are our students that have been in the building before, so they've ridden the bus before, they've lined up outside before, they've been to the bathroom before in our building and things like that. So they have some familiarity with our procedures, with the little way, et cetera. And that gives us a good opportunity to make sure that all of the procedures that we put into place, all of those security precautions are working well with students that know us, know the expectations and things like that. The following week, we will have everybody in the building. So we're looking at pre-K through second grade, and everybody, we're so excited to have kids back. So that, that's our plan. We are not going to do any kind of midway FDLA between now and then. We're juggling a lot of different schedule changes. We had some classes that it was very interesting that the parents chose the majority to stay remote. So we created 2 sections of remote for those particular classes. We also had a couple of sections where the majority of those parents chose to have their child in person. So I have 2 sections where they're teaching in person in the morning and in the afternoon also. So that required a lot of parent phone calls, letting them know, like, this is what your child's class is going to do. A lot of conversations with parents, those went amazingly well. We had less than 20 students who we had to call and give the option of either moving to another class or changing their initial choice, which is amazing for 540 students. So everything has gone pretty well. We made our arrangements where we are tight on space. We have used every nook and cranny that we can find. We have done our setups, we've gotten our desks arranged, we've taped off floors so that students know where their boundaries are, so we can maintain the safety protocols. We've ordered some different kind of furniture and things like that, so we are good to go. We're happy to have kids back.
How many kids will be in the building? About?
I think we're close, I think we're about 200.
Great. Okay.
I don't have a full number, but if you ask me by class, I can tell you.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Great, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think you said you.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Sarah. I think this feels like your first board meeting, you get to sit like this, right? Yeah, this is great.
No, we too are very excited. Similar to Leo, we think that things have our third graders only and our new students that know the really well. Really doing an example, and then first we'll have our fourth graders. We are doing good about our schedule. We have minimal class changes, and last year we did. We are having lots of discussions just about finalizing our physical spaces, renovations to our building, putting in all of the renovations that we've been talking about, marking the floors, our classrooms, shields, and all of that throughout the building. And yeah, so that's going well. We would like to revisit our rosters that we have out the way and in the coming weeks, really engage in students who are still maybe struggling with some of the remote learning and deciding actually to be on site to open our building again. In the meantime, it's really kind of open up. So, what questions do you all have?
How many students are you expecting back?
About the same, so 200.
Yeah. Okay, great. Other questions?
Yeah, I do have a question, maybe for most of you. So you guys said that you running out of spaces, and or do we, I would assume like furniture and stuff like that? Are we overflowing? Have we found a place for it all? Do we need to like put some outside and bury it under snow, the guy yesterday? So like furniture, chairs, desks, whatever the case may be, do we have enough room to store all that stuff in our buildings, or?
I don't think they're interested in storing most of that stuff. And I think they found ways to do that. I don't think that's what they're talking about as far as that is.
For example, in the reading center, you have 3 teachers working in a space, and you can't do that right now. So it's finding other spaces in the building to rehouse people, so that they're spread out, so that if they have kids in, we can maintain safe distancing. So being able to still offer the programming that we know kids need, doing it a safe way, and finding all the space to get everybody from out their locations.
So yeah, relocating staff into, I know we had classrooms that we needed to move to a different larger space because of the number of students. So like problem solving most of it.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Save the long question for Ms. Johnson. Welcome.
So for James Hart, we are, February 26th, so that's Friday, we are going to transition in and have some activities for our new students. That's going to be our 7th and 8th grade students who have never been in the building. And then we are going to start on a Tuesday. So Tuesday, March 2nd, is we'll have our 6th graders come in. We'll be doing some asynchronous days. So 6th graders will come in that Tuesday. You know, the other students remote will be kind of an async day, so we can have that time with them. Then the next day, it's going to be 6 and 7. And then we'll do our transition for the 7th graders. And then that last day, it's going to be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, getting them into the building and ready to go. One thing that we actually offered last week was our 2nd week. We actually had an academic Saturday school. This past Saturday, we had 30 students come in, which was great. And here for 3 hours in person with our teachers and our staff, and getting those missing assignments in. We got to sign up for parents that were interested. Right now, this upcoming Saturday, we already have 35 that are confirmed. I would like to come in and get that extra help with the assignments. This schedule actually helps us a lot, just because with the changing of the trimester, Right now, all of our scheduling, literally, when I say is done by hand. Everything we gotta do, we cannot put anything in IC because of the impact, the current grades and everything, so this gives us that time to continue to hand schedule, all of our students. So we've been, grateful to have an opportunity to have that Saturday school, to give it again, to do that in person and give that extra help as needed for students.
And how many students are you expecting back in the building?
I'm about 2:30.
Okay, great. Other questions?
You're trying to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, our numbers stayed pretty steady. If you remember on the survey, we were, I think Hart was about 30%. I wanted to return and Churchill around 35. I think I got right, Sarah, and Little was closer to 40. So that the numbers worked out pretty well. We have seen since when we started talking about returning and the metrics looking positive, I believe the principals, and I'm not sure if James Hart's had as many, or maybe it's similar, it appears that each building had, some families that reached out to them saying, hey, could I possibly come in? And we tried to accommodate those to this point, but starting today going forward, we are asking parents to be on the wait list. As you can see, the challenges of scheduling, transportation, et cetera, and getting safety protocols in place, we made a commitment that this was what it was going to be. But we also understand that we're about getting kids back in school, and it's hard for me to say no to that. And I think it's hard for teachers to say no to that, and our principals. So we've been able to accommodate some families, but at this point, at least for us to get started, we, I believe, are creating a waiting list for the calls for now. And then when we get into March, we can see how things look. And if there's some ways we can arrange it, we'll want them to be in. Again, that's what I'm talking about, adjustments. It sounds good sometimes in October, November. We learn a lot. It's one of the reasons, one of our mitigation efforts is, half days. We're not having lunch. It's a mitigation effort. We know this virus is airborne. We didn't learn that. We didn't know that in August. We weren't clear. We kind of thought it, but it became clear. So we learned new things and we listened to the scientific community of what might be best for mitigation efforts and then use, as I mentioned, our very knowledgeable nurses to plan what mitigation efforts we have. But we're hopeful to get more kids in somehow as we move forward. So if you are interested in hybrid learning, I would say call and get on that waiting list tomorrow.
Dale, I've got a question. So how is it gonna work with the bus transportation? How many extra?
I was gonna call on, Mary to talk about the buses and our nurses to talk about that in each building. So maybe we'll get our questions answered. But I wanna start with the nurses. So if you guys have any comments that you want to add to how you've been preparing your area and getting ready for the health of the kids and the adults that are in the building.
I don't know if we have anything new to add. We've been kind of getting ready for this since August, so we tweak our plans as well throughout the fall. But I know Willow's ready from the time they board the bus to the time they unload in the afternoon. So everything's written down, hand washing, social distancing, masking. There's signage, there's cloths on the floor, so everybody knows where to stand. There's footprints in bathrooms, and people where to stand. So I think it's pretty laid out. Lots of signage, lots of colorful reminders of keep your hands to yourself, keep your mask on. So, we learned a lot. I think during FBLA, that was kind of our trial run. It went well. Some kids aren't going to keep masks on. Some kids don't like washing their hands. Some kids like to touch everybody. So, we learned that these little things. It'll be a challenge, but I think we're up for it.
Good. Thank you. Pam, did you want to add anything about Churchill?
Well, basically, the same as what Gail says. I mean, it's day by day, and I mean, it's all the wear your mask, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, and no touching.
Thank you. And what's going on in Hart?
Yeah, same. We did learn a lot of FTLA. I think there's a nice opportunity for us to kind of go deep with as far as health and safety goes. We're planning to do a lot of parent education on the self-certification process. We're gonna have a video out, letters home for each building so the parents really know what that's all about, so that we can get kids in the building safely.
Great, thank you. And Mary, tell us a little bit about transportation and some of the other things you've been up to.
First of all, I'm thankful that we didn't have students with this snow because I can imagine our first time back and with this snow. But right now, how we plan it is, first let me start with our Kickert buses. They can fit from 65 to 70 students. We are less than half on every bus that I am routing. So there will be a maximum of 30 students. They will not be on the bus any longer than 30 minutes. That one group of students. They do disinfect and clean their buses daily. And this, because of our timing, we're going to pair James Hart with Churchill once again. And those buses will be disinfected and cleaned during, after they finish the James Hart route and before they start the Churchill route. So right now I have tentatively 3 buses at each school. And we are working closely with our student support. And they will have aides on those buses supplied by Kickert as well. And right now it's basically running very, very smooth. The protocol is going to be the same. If a student comes to a bus, they have to have their mask on before they board the bus. Let's say they forgot it or they played in their backpack the night before and they don't have it. We do have pediatric masks that I have ordered for the littler kids and regular masks for the older kids. We all forget it. I'll walk into grabbing my purse in the last minute, so it's understandable. And until the kids get a routine for it, and then after that, I think I'm actually looking forward to it. I've asked Dr. Mitchell every time he comes to me at my door and says, "Hold off on that." Well, I've changed it so many times. The only thing we have offered additional this year was paid busing for those returning that would like that normally would not get to take advantage of it. So we did lower the cost, and that will be updated on our website. And if you any questions, please call my office. As Dr. Mitchell said, no, back in there, I've been in there quite a bit. So I'm ready to go.
Great, thank you.
How many kids we have riding the bus? Did you give an estimate on where we're at as far as number of kids riding the bus?
Yes, I think I'm like Melissa, I can give you numbers for
Sure.
a bus. So I have, at Churchill, I have 2 buses that are 28 and 1 that are 25. Willow, I have 2 at 27 and 1 that is at 29. And at James Hart, right now, they are the lowest. And there's 20 students on one bus, and then 2 of them do have 26. So, again, it's a difficult, routing so that you're on that bus for a limited amount of time for students. And Holman is pretty well spread out. We go to areas of Plymouth, we go to areas of East Hazel Crest, and we go all over to Downham. So it's kind of, I try to cluster as best as we could. And again, quarter stops make a world of difference for timing.
So we have a nice number of our students every journey that have opted to take the bus, which is great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, now, questions.
So did I hear you right at the very end? So are all of the designated pickup spots and drop-off spots going to be corner routes?
Yes, they are, except for those, special education schools.
And right now, we're not anticipating more than 3 bus routes per school?
Correct. And all of the buses are less than that capacity. And no more than 30 will be our bus. If that happens, like Dr. Mitchell says, it's hard to say no. We'll just add another bus and keep everybody safe.
Yeah, that was my last question. So Kicker is prepared, has buses and drivers and aides in reserve, that if we need to increase the number of routes, that's not gonna be a problem.
Not at the present time, and they are actually, one school district offered to vaccinate their drivers, and so their drivers are all being vaccinated, in the next 2 weeks as well. Yeah.
I have a question, related to.
Oh,
I have a question related to, parents who didn't bring little ones, congregating. So I appreciate PDA for parents, just wondering, will we be also educating folks if you walk your kids to make sure there's still social distance, person congregating on the corner, and to see, not that it's a super spreader, but just want to reduce the chance of that. And parents that, quite frankly, that they are close, that do leave them outside of the mask, and maybe walking their kids, just wondering what type of education will provide us.
Very good. So what I do, and we just started doing last year, is I assign bus stops. And so there might be 2 or 3 kids in the middle of the block, and then I know they have to walk one house further. But instead of going to one corner, now it's both corners. So I'm trying to separate. The only place I have a problem is on the gate, it's a cul-de-sac, I can't get a bus down there, but I can't expect those kids to walk all the way down and over, but we do have a statement about, the protocols at the bus stop.
Excellent. And I appreciate that. I guess my other question is around technology, right? So as we transition in here, we get a test at trying to live stream tonight. Are we good to go? And, we have plenty of these, because, folks have been at home teaching these classes for the most part. They know the technology in their house. They know bandwidth, whatever, and just, I know we've had some upgrades, but how we feel about technology and our ability to communicate, for those that will be teaching classes at home, here,
Sure. I'll sit up here as well. Ron, first of all, thank you for the question. I think, that is a concern a lot of staff members had as well. We did do, a few years ago, we did, upgrade our infrastructure. We upgraded our, switches, we upgraded our access points. We reached out to our consultants that we use, Peers and Associates, and we had them, look at our infrastructure to assure us that we are going to have the capability to have our staff in our classroom zooming with the students. So we are confident that we'll be able to handle the traffic that is required to do that. With that being said, we know that there's always going to be issues. So I think the great thing that we're doing is we're getting staff in on the 8th. Staff are going to come in. We'll be able to then test while the students aren't here. You'll be able to test the infrastructure, and that day one, we're going to have our tech staff on standby, assisting all staff. So I want to say that we are very, very confident, but we always know that there's going to be issues, and we're ready to handle those.
No, I appreciate it. Being around e-learners now, I'm getting frustrated and cold drop and drop and so on. It's gonna happen, but it's not, starting off, it's not, last year, right? So we had the students also had that experience. I was just curious if you mentioned we were testing, so it's good to know we'll try.
Yep. So again, we are confident. We do know that along the lines, there are a lot of factors that come into remote learning, and so we're prepared to handle all those, and we are confident that we should be able to handle it.
great. Thank
You know, one last question, not for you, Jim, but probably maybe for Mary, but for the principals. So for the students who are coming in person, but are not using Kicker transportation, what's our plan for those students? Will those students kind of have to congregate, outside the entrance until it's time to come in? will those students be able to come in whenever, when they get here? And do we have designated areas for them to go into? What kind of plans for those students? Because I know we have a lot of students that do come on their own.
And I will be happy to turn this over to school administration.
I thought you would, man.
Who wants to take this one?
Sarah.
Our plan, for arrival, our car riders, and making sure they're out of the car, and our shelters, we have designated entrances for every grade level, so we also have a whole staff team plan for, as they come to us, they will enter the building and we will be scanning them and make sure they have a form and really get their temperature and they'll be released for the classrooms. But we have two designated areas in the smart entryway in our building, but we also have, for our third graders, we can run that hallway. And we also have, the glass hallway, that our fourth and fifth graders will be coming in. So and we have that on the floor, so that there's park in that, and then we'll make sure that they're all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it similar for both buildings?
Yes.
Yes, okay, then I'm not gonna, you guys don't have to come back and repeat the same thing. Thank you. Other questions?
I have, class sizes, so I know we're talking about a third of the people are coming in person. Whatever, how many kids are we talking about? 6, 7, 8, 9 in person in your class? Oh, sorry, let me try that again. So my question has to do with class size. So I know looking at the numbers, we are talking about a third of the students who are returning in person. What are the class size numbers looking like for in-class learning? If we were talking about a class size of 20 to 25, we're probably talking 6, 7, 8. Does that sound right, or is it different?
I would say probably each principal probably would need to address that. I think it's about what we talked about before. And if I'm wrong, you can say that. I think they're trying to keep it at around 11 or so at Willow and Churchill. And like Melissa said, if there was one class that's a little bit larger, they moved down to the learning center to create a little bit bigger space. And at Hart, I think we were talking about 15 kids. So I assume it's in within those ranges of the size of the classes of what we talked about a couple months ago. We were trying to stay at based on the percentages that we were seeing. So we have some room here and there, but I think those are pretty reasonable. But yeah, I know we've been talking about that a lot ourselves, so great question. Trying to stay within that range. It'll cause some problem like they talked about with scheduling. When you have a class that, let's say an average of 20 or 21 kids in a third grade classroom or a second grade classroom, and when you do have 17 months to come back, that's where they might have to make a change here or there, where they split it into two. So they've been very creative to make sure that the class sizes are reasonable to keep that physical distancing to the best way possible for the staff and the students.
Other questions?
I just had one question for Mary. You mentioned paid busing, and just to clarify, that's for students who don't normally qualify for bus services, but we're offering that paid service now for them if they choose to have, right?
Correct. Because a lot of it has to do with, the parents now are getting called back to work.
Right.
And then, especially during the winter months, they used to drop the kids off, and now, so we are offering it this year only, for that, for parents that cannot get their kids that really want to be here in person. Then we're not gonna.
We had a nice turnout for that too, right?
Yes, we did.
There was a nice survey we did, and we did have several parents take advantage of that, which is great. So we'll probably be offering something like that for summer school also, because usually summer school we don't offer transportation, but it was a great idea from one of our staff members to use some of the route to the federal money that we're receiving to help some kids get here for that summer learning opportunities. So look for that too coming forward.
So for those parents, is it a flat rate or does it fluctuate according to how far away or?
It is a flat rate. It started out when we were going to return, way back, I think we decided on, roughly it was 120. Right now it's, $75 for the rest of the school year, flat fee. Dr. McAllister, approved that, so the website will be updated. Now, I'm not going to send across 2 blocks from your house to the
Right.
school, but there are several that, honestly, little kids, for example, you know, they live west of Dixie Highway, and that kindergarten student is expected to walk. So thankfully, there are, those that we can be of service this year of all years. It's a time, it's a new, it's a change for us. Like Dr. Mitchell said, we're all adjusting, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, but our district is doing well. So, and our board, that's perfect, so it helps all of our families.
Thank you. Other questions?
Sorry, I have one.
Yes.
Are the kids sitting staggered or every other seat?
If there's 2 in the same household, we can set 2 to a seat. They're going to be assigned seating from each school. Each school will assign the seats, and they will be staggered. Now, it's easier for the littler kids, of course, because they're tucked behind the seats, and they're surrounded. Now, the older kids, they're going to be staggered as well. There's a lot of siblings, but if they're in the same family, then yes, we are going to assign 2 to the seat. But other than that, they will be staggered.
I have a few things that I want to mention. When we closed the buildings on March 13th, it was like flipping a switch. I mean, boom, done, closed. Opening up has not been like flipping a switch. It's been anything. It's been like a strobe light. And the patience that our community has shown and our staff and our students, it's nothing short of beyond admirable. We have always prided ourselves in this district on working very closely with our staff and having a really good cooperative relationship. We respect our staff as the professionals that they are. And so while we would love for the kids to have been back in school today, quite frankly, the opportunity to have our staff feel comfortable when they welcome the children back is something that we have to take advantage of. And to know that in just a few more weeks, when we welcome students back, our staff will be able to feel like we have done everything possible to keep them safe is something that I think was worth doing. So we really do appreciate the patience that the community has shown. And for those that will be sending their children back for hybrid learning, we look forward to seeing those kids. For those whose children will be staying remote, rest assured that your children will still be getting an incredibly fine educational experience. The absolute best that we can offer at this time. And we are doing everything we can to make sure that children in both programs are ready in every possible way to learn and to excel. And when we are finding kids who are falling short, we will do everything in our power to give them opportunities to do the learning that we know they can do and to accomplish the things that we know they can accomplish. Along with all of those comments about being patient, I'm going to also ask that as we make this transition, we all remember that we're going to need to be patient. Remember what it's like when we start school in August and the buses are late, or they miss a stop, or there's hundreds of things that can happen. Well, the same thing is gonna happen even though we're starting in March. Those same things are going to happen, so we need to be patient. We're going to have the same types of things that happen when we start kids in the building in August that require all of our patience. So let's remember that when we have questions, the best way to get them answered is to call your child's school. Communicate with your child's school. If it's transportation, you can call Mary Harvard or call your child's school. I've got to say this. Facebook is not the best place to get the answers to the questions, to your burning questions. It's a great place to collaborate on information, but the information is not always accurate. So please, as we transition into getting our children back into our buildings, we want to hear your voices. Call us with your questions. Communicate with us, because as we take 2 steps forward, there will be, on occasion, 1 step back. I really appreciate all of the hard work that our administration, teachers, and the rest of our staff have done in creating a plan that I really believe is not only going to work, but is going to help our children thrive. Again, whether they are remote or back in the buildings. So with that being said, go ahead. Yeah.
So I have a few thoughts that along lines with what Shelley said. I think one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to acknowledge that this shift from where we are today to what we're doing on March 1st, sorry, or a little bit before, I think it's a daunting task for everybody involved. I think it's a daunting task for our administrators, our nurses, our teachers, our assistants, but I also think it's a daunting task for families as well, because we have families who are shifting, coming into hybrid. It's a change in schedule for them. For the families that are staying remote, it's a challenge and a daunting task for them because they're going to be now shifting and changing their schedule for remote learning. So, want to acknowledge that this is not something that we as a board or the district, HEA, the administrative staff, or anything and so on, have taken lightly. I mean, I think we all know that. Well, I personally want to acknowledge that this is not something that is easy to do for anybody. So, and again, for the students and the teachers, I liken this to starting the school year all over in August, because there's 3 grades at least, 3 to 4, depending on how you cut it, that have never been in the building where they have gone into. So there's going to be a learning curve for all of those students. And then there's the staff that has to help them make the transition from where they were before or where they have never been in one of our buildings. So when they acknowledge that, I think the other thing also, we've talked about metrics and staff and student health, and I think that's something that we're going to continue to do to monitor what's going on to make sure that it's safe to open up. I know Dr. McAllister, he's keeping an eye, along with Dr. Mitchell and so on, are keeping an eye on the metrics, both in the county and the state. And obviously our nursing staff and administrators are also taking a look at not only the staff health, but the students' health as well. We want to track all that. We want to make sure that this is safe and everyone is healthy, regardless of which choice they make, whether they want to come in person or whether they want to stay at home. And the other thing that I think this plan, why we're meeting today, at least from my standpoint, and why we're talking about March 1st is, back in November, we talked about getting 2 weeks notice. Well, this time, now we've kind of made a slight change. We're providing almost a 4-week notice. And the intent is to try and give everyone in the community being, families, students, staff, the buildings, enough time to make plans to transition to either staying remote and changing their schedules around, and then also for the students and families who decide that they won't bring their kids at home. So I think we're trying to give everyone enough notice when we make these types of changes. And then lastly, one of the things that I like about this plan, and we've talked about since November, and even prior to that all year, is trying to figure out how to provide a learning opportunity, best learning opportunity for every student that's involved. Because one thing we do know, we've heard from students and so on, and families, that there are a group of students out there that are struggling with remote learning. And we want to try, and then there's a large group that is being very successful with remote learning. So one thing with this plan is that we want to try and give an opportunity, the best opportunity possible for those students who just are not doing well in remote learning. So hopefully this will address that need in that part of our community.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve the reopening program?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bethea,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Davenport,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mr. Bosch,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you all for your incredibly hard work and diligent focus on our community. All right, are there any discussion
I
items?
have a couple of quick things, if you
Great.
don't mind. One I did want to mention, and I know Kim mentioned it, the Saturday school was up and running last Saturday, which was great to hear how many kids you got and getting support. Mrs. Hugo actually called me today, you probably know. She's like, Dale, I need a couple more teachers because of the more kids they want to bring in. So we're planning on having 6 staff members help support Saturday school for some of our James Hart students, which is absolutely awesome. We need to take advantage of, being able to reopen immediately. So that's great. And I know some other FDLA type of supports are out there. Also want to give a quick thank you. I did email the staff, I think last night. I didn't email the board, but I did want to mention, we got a tremendous amount of snow. I mentioned this earlier, but specifically, John Smith, the head custodian at Willow, spent countless hours helping this weekend. Jerry Sanchez, our head custodian at Hart. Walter Harris, one of our night custodians, also came in. Ryan Hill handles, you see him on our lawnmower all summer. Ryan was here all weekend, along, of course, with our head maintenance guy, Paul Kuzmak, and Director of Building and Grounds, Kevin Keene. As I mentioned, Kevin and Paul are part of our health and safety team. Well, I invited them here tonight too, to answer any questions, but really to thank them. We thank the nurses and Mary for all their hard work. A quick update on the vaccine update. As I mentioned, we are having staff gated a lot of appointments, which are great. We've been, our nurses have been great sending out the links they get from the county. I think we've been ahead of that game for our staff. I get texts from staff all day and night saying, Dale, did you have a link? I got an appointment. I'm so excited. I get an email, whatever. It's great. I'm glad they're getting out there, but also there's frustration with it because it's a little chaotic and you just got to keep after it. As I mentioned, I was on a call this morning with 66 South Cook school districts, and the regional superintendent had met with 5 high school sites. So the county is in preparations to set up 5 high school sites where feeder schools and other elementary district staff can go directly to those high school sites. This would just be a link for educators. They anticipate in about another week, they have their first site up and running, and then in the next few weeks have other sites up and running. They can only do 400 or so vaccines a day based on availability. They might be able to ramp it up more. They're not sure who's going to work these sites. They're hoping they'll have enough National Guard, but also our kind nurses again have said, hey, I'll go help if they need it at these days and hours. So it's moving forward, but those preparations are still happening at the county level for educators. So we have to go through those other county links, through Walgreens, Jewel, every way possible. Our staff is searching out. Quite honestly, by the time they get that up and running, our staff may be vaccinated. So we're trying to keep, the school districts are trying to keep the numbers updated to the county. That's why we're asking our staff who's been vaccinated, because originally we would have needed 300 vaccines at a minimum to educate our staff. Well, we only needed like 150 now because half of our staff are almost vaccinated. So, the number we would need is less, and that's the same for some other school districts too. So it's a little frustrating when you see on the news that a school district in Lake County, got Walgreens to come in specifically for their school district up in Hawthorne Hills, Vernon Hills. How that happened, I have no idea. Nobody knows. There's a couple other districts that had Jawasco come in. The regional superintendent said because they used that like a Walgreens or Gillespie for their flu shots. They already had a relationship with them, so they, Walgreens reached out to them and asked if they could set that up. That'd be great if that was for all of us. That's not the case. And every county in the state is doing it a little bit differently. So in Cook County, this is our current plan, or lack of their one. But our staff is out there working extremely hard to get that done. So again, I want to take a moment to thank our health and safety team. I got them just a short gift. I gave Paul and Kevin their flowers earlier today to either keep themselves or give them to their wives because they haven't seen them all weekend. So I want to, just make a special note for a couple of our staff. I'll start with Barry. Thank you thank you for all you've done. Transportation, our health and safety, ordering a million things. For you. Kevin, Paul, everybody goes to Mary to order all our PPE. She's on top of everything. We are prepared in many ways because of what Mary does for us. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
That's Jessica. Jessica, our James Hart nurse. Not only are this is for all the hard work you've done in preparing James Hart to return our students to school, but also Jessica recently completed her school certification, right? From the health coordinator onto the teacher's salary schedule, the certification on that is awesome. So congratulations, your knowledge and expertise, your drive and energy and commitment is amazing on our team. So thanks. Pam, come on up. Pam, what a way for us to finish our last year, right? Pam and I are in the same class. We're retiring at the end of this year. We had a little get together. I think there's 11 of us retiring this year. We had a little Zoom call together, reminiscing the other afternoon. It was amazing, and Pam, you've done an amazing job getting church already. So all right, save the best for last. Not only is Gail the leader of our health and safety team in many, many regards, and bosses Melissa around plenty too.
I didn't say that, did I?
I said it because I know how this works. Their secretaries are here, and they wanted to be here too. Gail I've known Gail for forever. She actually saw my oldest, who's 21, I think, walk into a PTA meeting naked. I had to bring my girls when they were little to the PTA meetings and things like that, and she'd be cleaning off the toilets, and Gail would walk out to the PTA, she'd be, and Gail's like, all right, I like this guy. We go way back, a lot of times. And Gail also just finished, I want to get this right, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Gail just finished up her national awards. She did this for her own team, her own knowledge, and her own just moving forward and getting better all the time. And that's the type of person Gail has been forever, whenever she's in charge of. Sean, lucky guy also, so. Ladies, I don't mean to brag, but Gail's been a little bit nice. I just want to mention, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, we did have a little virtual happy hour on Friday with the staff. It was after hours. I was still at school, so it wasn't quite as happy as I would like, but it was still a fun time. And we had a ton of staff, so a very good time. We played this online little trivia game and gave out gift cards that the community engagement team and Shelley had acquired for us many months ago. So we all on the staff, we had a wonderful time just connecting and bantering about. So it was a good time. It was a good way to help us start feeling that we're coming back a little bit. So thanks everybody for your support.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, we have an executive session needed to discuss specific personnel. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havenforth?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Bethany?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes, 7 ayes, motion carries. We will return tonight only to adjourn. Thank you all for joining us, whether it was here or at our first live from Homewood meeting. Looking forward to seeing you next Monday night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good to see you.
And I think